Welcome back for another installation of the YWCA Spokane RSJ Spotlight. This month I have April Eberhardt joining me to talk more about her work within Spokane Public Schools and the community. Welcome, April. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I want to get into it, but let's start with your background because you have a lot of experience everywhere.
Yes, so I am a transplant to Spokane. I got here in 2017. My husband just retired from the Air Force after 24 years. That's been my life for the last 2.5 decades. I hail originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've attended college in Indiana, Pennsylvania, bachelor's degree in English. Thought I was going to be a writer. I love writing. I do write, but my career is not as a writer yet. Um, but I have always taken an interest in Black culture. The last 3 years of my high school experience was spent at a public school in my neighborhood. I had gone to a private school. That was the first time I had experienced Black teachers, Black administrators, and it really had an impact on me. You don't realize it if it's not something you have to worry about, but the empowerment and just being able to see representation impacted me. Eventually, I became a teacher. I married my husband 23 years ago, and we have traveled the world a little bit in the United States. And in that process, I found my professional journey after several paths in education, public education, which I think was always my destiny. I consider myself an educator, but I know that working with students, being a teacher, impacting youth, I think that is my calling in life. It's something that really generates a lot of passion for me. I am a college and career counselor right now um, in Spokane Public Schools at a high school, but I also taught English before. Um, I started my profession um, in 2007 in the state of California, teaching English, different locations. Um, and in that process, I learned a lot about connecting with students, particularly learning more about other students who were not of my background, but also learning how to support students who do look like me and realizing the connection in that was very powerful because I had experienced it. So I just to sometimes I lose track of everything that I do. I stay pretty busy. I just became the education committee chair for the NAACP, an organization that supported me as a student. I remember getting a scholarship. I remember writing an essay in 12th grade for the Pittsburgh branch of the NAACP and getting a scholarship on, supporting Black male students in school. Somewhere I still have that. I also was the equity committee chair and an exec board member for the Spokane Education Association, really trying to focus on equity in that capacity for staff. I'm a board member currently for Leadership Spokane, and I was in that program, the class of 2020. I am writing for the Black Lens, and I have written for the Black Lens in the past. The relaunch is something that I'm excited about. So I'm finishing articles for that. Trying to tap into my artistic brain. I'm a writer, so I love poetry. I love writing things like that. And I'm also tapping into the little bit of art that I have in me when it comes to drawing. I'm not a super great portrait drawer or anything, but I do like to create art. I'm inspired by art, and that kind of helps me decompress sometimes because I think you can tell stories all kinds of ways. And when I stop and look at a piece, it does inspire me. So I do a lot of things. I'm a mother of three. I have a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And my 14-year-old is really shaping his identity around social justice, which is something that I'm kind of proud of. I bring him along to different things that I do. just to give him the exposure, but he's already got it in him. He's very in tune with civil rights, social justice, and all of the things that I'm passionate about. So, um, yeah, I have two master's degrees. I knew I should have been a teacher, but I ran away from it because I don't know. I thought I was going to work in government and pursued a whole master's degree in general administration. I didn't want to not finish it because I had started it. I did do a few jobs within the federal government because that's the world that I was exposed to as a military spouse. But then I was like, yeah, this is not for me. I'm definitely someone who needs to be where the people are, building those relationships, getting excited about connections, and just working on that level. So when I became a mom, I said I need to have a career that's conducive for life as a mom. And that's when I pursued getting my certificate to teach English, which turned into a master's degree. So that's where I found myself professionally, and that's where I've kind of stayed. So I think I included most of it, but something's probably left off, but it's all good.
Yeah, oh my gosh, you've done so much. Well, congrats to, your spouse for uh retiring from the military. That is a
Thank you.
huge deal. I'm also a former military spouse, so I know how that
Mm,
is. And I've had
yeah,
a lot of family in the military as well.
yeah.
That's kind of what brought me to Spokane.
Oh,
And I also think it says a lot about you that you were able to find your career and your calling while, like, being in the military, because it is hard. And
mhm,
especially with all the moving, it's hard to kind of set a foundation, find those roots if you're not,
yeah.
there for a really long time. And then just all the demands of like being a military family as well. So,
Yes, it is it's a lot of stop and start and losing people and then having to rebuild and
yeah.
all of that. So I'm actually glad that I found passion in career because it's kind of been an anchor for me. And diversity, equity, and inclusion has always been the lens that I work through. So I've always found that wherever I am. Stay
Yeah,
tuned.
that's really great. To have that grounding and like just kind of know who you are wherever you are.
Not easy. It's not
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it is easy. Um, what kind of I'm also excited for the Black Lens relaunch. I'm so glad that it's happening. What kind of writing do you do for them?
So I did an opinion piece. I actually submitted a piece of art to match the opinion piece, and I did an interview. So I have a background in journalism because it was a minor for me. In high school I wrote for the New Pittsburgh Courier, which is one of the early historically Black newspapers. I'm still around today in Pittsburgh, but I wrote for them in high school and in college. So, and that's really something that I want to get back to as well. But those are my first two pieces. When Sandy Williams was here, I wrote different articles. I did a poem. I interviewed a local person that I know who does track and field. So I've done opinion pieces, interviews, reporting type stuff. So that's what I hope to continue. And I know that as a member of the NAACP, as a committee chair, there will be opportunities to write from that vantage point as well. So,
Yeah, I know that you said you just joined as the committee lead, but what kind of uh visions do you have around being the education committee lead?
I really hope to build capacity among Black educators. That's important because I know that there are that we're out here, and I know some of us, but I really want to build capacity in community in that regard. Because as a military spouse, you come and you know what's familiar to you. It's just normal for any person in any population. You go where you're familiar. I hope to really establish some awareness for the community around what laws and statutes and ordinances exist related to DEI in the education system, particularly. I also taught ESL in Germany for the Department of Defense, and I learned a lot about educational rights and sometimes parents, and of course special education rights. And we know that there's a disproportionate amount of Black students who are in special education. I want to be able to educate families on things like that, what the IDEA Act says, what our local state RCW say, so that when parents are facing things of different when they're facing different situations and scenarios in the public school system, they have context. One thing I also want to do is, because I also, I believe that it's good to have leaders, but we need to empower each other also and build solidarity with information. So I hope to do workshops. Just, some people don't know what they don't know because it's not their wheelhouse. I know a lot of things about education because I've been doing it for so long. But I also want to get trained on advocacy and learn how to advocate for families, and also teach them how to advocate for themselves. I want to create a hierarchy, not a hierarchy, a flow chart, an advocacy flow chart, I'm sorry, of all the places in the city and local government, state government, even federal, the processes that you follow, kind of using that military mind, following the chain of command. You start at the lowest level. And I would like to see there to be, checks and balances with accountability on certain things, just to make sure and certain that all systems are flowing properly, because we have a civil rights office here in the city. We have, of course, OSPI. We have the federal government process. We have local channels within the school systems. So just making sure that there is awareness of who to go to, what to do when you go to those people, and also a protocol for how to advocate for a concern or issue. Because I believe, in equity, that way, you need to be able to help people identify where their resources are, who those people are who are in positions to do that. And I also believe we need to hold the system accountable as well, and just make sure that what's happening is what they say they're doing is what they're doing, and just create spaces where there is an exchange of information. But ultimately, my goal is to build within the community, because I've done work with the Carl Maxey Center. I belong to the Links Incorporated, which is a historically Black women's organization. We did some Black history workshops. We just finished up some artwork that we had over Christmas break, over the holiday break, to submit work to the Spokesman's Black Voices Symposium. So I just want to get in the community. I want to be an educator in that capacity, not just in the schoolhouse. And also creating a space where resources are shared. I'm a college and career counselor right now. So for me, this is a pretty cool position, because it does already connect me to community entities and institutions. And I want to bring that into the schoolhouse, because I think there should always be a bridge between the community and the schoolhouse. So I'm always calling folks, hey, can you come in and talk to the students? Because I want them to see exposure. I want to expose them. I want them to see what they might not know. And you don't know what you don't know until you see it. And you might find something very interesting that you have never seen before. So I want to do that. So collectivism is something that I care about. And I know that it's hard because we don't always agree. And I often think of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, Dr. King, and they had the same objective in mind. I think that I really want to try to focus on collectivism, because many hands make the work light. And there's also, you don't always know what you don't experience. We're all positioned differently. So our vantage points are different. So I just really want to be a voice, because if I don't tell you, you won't know. So that's kind of what I see. Just building capacity, creating learning spaces, workshops, advocacy, teaching, being a support as well, of course, as needed, but also teaching the community, teaching the people how to navigate through advocacy, knowing your rights, because I'm an advocate for my kids. Anybody will tell you, and I know kind of when there's a concern, I know who to go to and what to say and all of that, because that's just what I know. But I want to be able to share that with other families and parents, and actually have a formalized material or resource that they can use to follow that process with
Definitely.
information about who's who and what's what. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Um, you know, always fun things too, just building capacity.
Yeah, I resonate a lot with that, especially as someone that was in high school, not knowing all the options and not knowing even where to go to
Mm-hmm.
find out like what I could do with my life, and that there are a lot of options for students after high school. I think it's
Absolutely.
really great. I think you are really good at identifying all the gaps in the systems, and trying to close those, um along with collectivism and being transparent, because there's power in education, right? There's power in knowing,
Mhm.
and sharing that knowledge. I think only strengthens the community. So what you're doing is really needed here. How long have you been a counselor at Spokane Public Schools?
So this is year number 7 for me. We got here in June of 2017
Hmm.
from Germany, and I started working in August, 2 weeks before the school year started. So
Oh, wow.
that's the fastest I've ever picked up a job when we PCSed to a
Mhm.
location. And I've just been in this role, which is a really unique role because this position doesn't exist in every district. So it's kind of like a specialist role, but I love it because the guidance counselors are very busy doing a lot of other things. So we really care about, in the district, they care a lot about getting kids ready for their pathway, and having a dedicated person for that. So I do a lot with seniors, but I try to also cultivate that awareness and exposure within the underclassmen. So I'm always trying to, again, have guests come in. I do empowerment Thursdays. I also do field trips, but really with the seniors, getting them plugged into programs that work and helping them learn that it doesn't have to be a 4-year path. It's great if it works for you, but I always tell my own story. I had a 4-year degree, got a Bachelor of Arts in English, and just because I had that degree, the jobs were not waiting for me. So I really want to also um, shift that narrative to really focus on what career are you interested in, what are your passions, what are your skills, because when you know that, then going to get the education or training isn't just getting it for the sake of getting it. It's also you getting it with intentionality, because I believe that our student loan debt situation is insane in America, and I don't want students to go just because I told them they got to go to college. That's what I was told back in the 90s when I graduated, and I did it. And it worked out for me eventually. I found my way, but there was not a lot of talk about the trades, or they made it sound like college 4-year, like going academic route was the only way. But if you don't know what careers are attached to your degree, then you're still in a situation where economic empowerment might not happen if you don't have the job that will, if you had to take loans, pay for your student loans eventually and all of that. So I really want to just help educate around that too, because there are a lot, I've learned in Spokane, there are a lot of opportunities for multiple options after high school in different career capacities. It doesn't always have to be a 4-year. And really wanting to bridge that information into the school. So I like the position. I get to connect with colleges, community organizations, and share the work. I kind of bleed out what I do in the community, and try to inspire. We've had workshops around how to do personal statements. We just did a Black College Expo trip over to the West Side. So just helping share that information, because sometimes families don't want to come into the schoolhouse for different reasons. So using spaces like the Carl Maxey Center, um, you know, I would like to keep sharing what I'm learning as a professional, what I do as a professional in the community space as well. We did financial aid workshops in the community last spring, just because we need to increase our numbers as a state, and really just helping people understand what that is. Because a lot of times, process aversion, I call it, people don't like the processes that exist to get things done. And as a military spouse and you being a military brat, you know that anything that deals with the government is a hurry up and wait and a long process of
Yep.
paperwork and
Yeah.
all of that. I've pretty much mastered all the types of federal forms, but just helping that knowledge base, because I also want to teach about generational wealth, and I'm listening more to things even for my own benefit about that. Just not necessarily chasing the American dream, but how to be empowered to be your own boss, and really reshaping how we look at what we can do in America. Not necessarily having to work for someone. I work for someone now, but I really want to get into the world of how do we work for ourselves and build that type of wealth over generations. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Very much needed. Um, I see that you're also a culturally responsive trainer for the Washington Education Association.
Yeah.
So I would love to learn more about that because I have no clue about it, like,
Yeah, I
the
forgot.
association.
Yeah, so my second year, I got involved with that, and um, that was the training that the district was using from about 2016 to recently about 2021. There are some changes happening with regard to that, but it's called culturally responsive classroom management. There are a total of 5 modules. We in this district got through module 3, and because of the shift that's happening, that training doesn't exist here in Spokane, but there are still opportunities for us to train virtually with other places in the state, because the Washington Education Association is the state level umbrella for the local unions. So I'm a union member, and that's how I got involved. But we were basically giving staff training throughout the schools about how to build. It starts out with relationships first, because that's probably the best start you're ever going to have to helping understand students. And then the last module we did talked about racism specifically. Went into the 4 types of racism, and really broke down some things. So again, there are some changes happening, so that training does not happen anymore. But I still consider myself a trainer, because if they called me and said we need a trainer to do a Zoom training, because over COVID we did a lot of it, and even post COVID, because this happens across the state. It happens in Seattle. My hope is to be able to. I'm no longer equity committee chair because my term is over, and I just switched gears and got involved with other things. But I hope to be able to take it to smaller, or not take it myself, but suggest or really build a system where smaller, more rural districts can get the training, because there are local unions at every school district. So I want to be able, because I know my kids have gone through the medical lake school system, and it's a little different with regard to knowledge base on diversity. And I've been very transparent with, and they've been receptive with the principal of my son's high school, and just being able to have that conversation and dialogue. And what I find, and this is also something I hope to make an impact on as equity education committee chair for NAACP, is helping smaller school districts navigate the racism, because it happens, and they don't always, they know it shouldn't happen, but there's always the issue of how should school administration and school leadership go about addressing it. And so my hope is to be able to do that type of work still, and maybe work with the union to see if they can carry the training out. If there is an interest in training for the members of the Spokane Education Association, because the district no longer uses it, it is still available if they request to have it, because the suggestion was that we still offer it through SEA, Spokane Education Association, and make it available for those interested. So that was the talks. That was what was in the talks we were having at the end of last year. But yes, I did about 4 years of that training, and it was an interesting ride. There were some great moments where people wanted to understand more, and there were some tense moments where people weren't really wanting to hear all of the stuff, particularly with the racism stuff. The relationship pieces were great because that's what teachers and educators already should be doing, right? Building the relationship. But this is a training that was developed by WEA leadership in partnership with the University of Washington. So it was trademarked and copywritten by WEA. So unfortunately, we didn't get through all the modules, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was helpful. And it also opened up pretty good dialogue for a lot of the trainings. Good dialogue. It's not always easy, especially if your experience is not seeing the world through a lens of what racism is and what it can do. But I enjoyed it. I got 4 years under me and 4 to 5 years under me. And if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, still
That's
a trainer have it's on pause right now when it comes to the availability of it. But again, if I wanted to jump back in there, I could definitely do it. But I'm also busy in other capacities.
Yeah, I think you're just a little bit busy all the time.
Yeah. Mhm.
I think that's really great and needed to focus on the rural communities too.
Mhm.
Do you know of any other work that's currently being done in those communities?
I don't. I know that it's come up. So as education committee chair, we want to try to continue with that conversation and connection, building that bridge with the Cheneys and the medical lakes. I have kind of been into the medical lake because I've already kind of had this conversation
Mm-hmm.
because I had 2 daughters and now a son who's gone through there. So yeah. I
Yeah.
also started an LLC. I forgot. I'm still learning how to be a business owner, but I started something called Let's Thrive, and it was inspired because a good friend of mine who you probably heard of, Stephanie Courtney,
Yep.
she just became a woman of achievement, well deserved. Um, we connected here at Shadle, where I work, Shadle Park High School. We connected, and she supported the students with STEP, and you know the workshops, we did a lot of workshops around Black History Month. It was to support the Black Voices Symposium and give kids a space to learn history and to create. So those were really fun. And I want to be able to do that myself. So I'm trying to become an independent consultant slash educator around that, working with youth, providing that information and that experience with the community. So that's something that's newish for me. I've also written some children's books. They're 10 years, or they're probably more than 10 years old now, but literacy, because I was an English teacher, was important to me. And at a point, I was my own private tutor. Not my own, but I was a private tutor with my own business. So I want to kind of do that a little more. It's just hard to juggle everything, but that's where the idea came from, to do Let's Thrive LLC, to create. And I've done a little bit of stuff with regard to starting workshops or working in partnership with other women this summer, to be a part of their workshops under the umbrella of what I do for Let's Thrive. And I consider it what I already do anyway. So I'm just learning how to do that because I've not been an entrepreneur, but before.
Yeah.
Kind of, maybe here and there doing stuff. Like I did have my own business while we were stationed in California for a little bit, which was tutoring and providing, before and after care.
Where in California were you?
So we were at Beale Air Force Base, which is about 45 minutes to an hour from Sacramento. So
Mm-hmm.
that was first for 4 years. And then we drove down the state to Edwards Air Force Base in the Mojave Desert.
Wow.
And we
Yeah,
were there for
my
7 years.
my dad was at Travis. He was
Oh, yeah.
a civilian contractor, but yeah,
Mhm.
he was there for a really long time. I'm from Sacramento, but I also have
Oh, yeah.
I have family down in like the Navy bases down there.
Oh, yeah. In San Diego.
Yep.
Yeah, we always try to find the bases. So yeah, we went to Travis quite a bit. In fact, I think I got my wisdom teeth pulled at Travis because they had the hospital. So yeah, know all about that. It's interesting talking to other people because I always meet people who've been either who know about Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where I'm from, or who've been at some of the bases, or even from some of the cities. I met someone who's from Grand Forks, North Dakota, which was our very first base, and I was
Oh
like,
wow.
who knows about Grand Forks unless you've been stationed there and someone was actually from there, someone that I met recently. So I get a kick out of it because the world is much bigger than we realize. So that's kind of helped me see how to build relationships with
Yeah.
just sometimes the most unlikely people that
Yes.
you know, like I would probably not been friends with this person if I was in Pittsburgh my whole life or something like that. So yeah.
Yeah. I kind of want to shift a little bit, because we are both Spokane transplants. What is it about Spokane that made you feel empowered to do all of these things, to like build community, to really make a difference here? What was it that kind of drew you to make those changes?
It's a good question because I feel like I'm just getting to a place where I found footing because I've been involved, but the group that I'm in right now is really um, I just this is interesting because I am less attached to the military base here at this location than I've ever been, and it's always been a tight knit community based um, building process with other military families everywhere we've gone, even down to raising my kids around other military families. So when we got here, I got employed off base very quickly, as I mentioned earlier. And that's kind of how I started to build the connection to the community. And I mean, when we were in Germany, we were PCSing and I was planning a diversity day, something that had not been done. Um, and I've always been about that. When we were in California, I did workshops and brought people from the base out. It's funny because I did a career fair and I wanted the students that only wanted to be an entertainer or an athlete to know that there are other options. So I brought NASA and the base out to do this career fair because they were driving me crazy. Like, you guys got to know there's other things. Not to say your plans are bad, but there are other options. And I've always been like that. Here, being where I am, working in the school system, I've built relationships and just slowly, slowly, because you kind of just got to wait and find your groove. But I already had the passion and was already doing the work. I was in my position for a few months, and I don't even remember how one of last year's um, Women of Achievement recipients is Shamira Kanakamura, and I don't even remember how we met, but I was on the Get Connected planning committee within my first year, and that's one of the biggest events held in SPS for BIPOC students to help with representation in careers and things like that. So it's been going on for a few decades, but I just found, I just, I don't know, it's sort of probably a natural process of finding the people that, um, you're like-minded with. And then just going to different events. And I would say that though within the last year or two, this is really where it's all kind of coming, meeting more people, becoming a part of different organizations, and just showing up. There's an interesting community in Spokane, and it's small with regard to the Black community, but then it's big in some ways because I always meet new people. And then so the events that are happening in the community give you new exposure to that, and new relationships and new connections, and even trying to bridge some of that onto the base because I meet some of the recruiters and build that relationship, so they're able to get involved with some of what we do out here and spread it to because you always have people on the base coming from any variety of cities or
Mhm.
countries, and so you don't always know what's available. So Spokane is interesting because I'll say probably Miss Sandy Williams was one of the first people to say, okay, come on in. And I was like, I can write for the Black Lens. I love to write. And I appreciate her for that because I would say she was one of the first people to make me feel like I belonged here, even though I wasn't born here. And it just started with that little things, Get Connected, the Black Lens, and then meeting people through work. And then eventually being in different organizations and just learning who people were. And you intersect paths with others, and so I love the work. The work was already in me. Like anytime if I'm painting walls, it's going to have a DEI lens. if I'm like, that's just what I do. And anyone who's known me at any duty station can tell you that, can definitely tell you that. So um, yeah, there's a lot of things, and Spokane is a lot like Pittsburgh with regard to climate and things, but there's a lot of things. I don't love the cold, but I grew up in Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
Was just home, and it was like we got there and were able to experience the first snowfall. I was like, I don't want to get stranded all the way in Pennsylvania. I got to get back to the west there. But community wise, I'm learning still daily, that building community is an evolving process. So still learning and just being at different things, getting my son involved. My daughters are pretty much adults now, so they're in college and young adult mode. My son is able to join me and learn about different programs, and he has to come with me to a lot of things. So, and that helps him grow a different experience as a military kid because he's at the end of the career.
Mhm.
So he got to experience camp this summer at the MLK Center. And I mean, he was in his glory, you know? So just finding where things are. My first year, I was calling different organizations to see if they'd come because I had just come from a job where I was building a lot of connections. Even though it was a military base in a smaller community, even smaller, bringing people in, connecting with different entities on the base to support the Abbott program because I was on that committee. So I feel like little things led me to be in the role that I'm in, and I didn't realize it because I enjoy what I do a lot, just because it puts you in connection with others.
How do you um care for yourself? Because this is really hard work. Sometimes it can be lonely. It's usually really heavy, and it seems like an upward battle a lot of the times, like you really need to have that kind of stamina and longevity because it's usually a lifelong effort.
Mhm. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I struggle with that. Um, I'm struggling with when to retreat and when to keep going. I mean, you sometimes feel like you're running on a hamster wheel. You oftentimes feel like you're doing the same thing and you don't get different results. So for me, I recently lost my grandmother over the winter Christmas break, and I spent time just cathartically doing art because I think I'm a creative at heart too. That's just my bag, I call it. But don't always give myself time. I'm always doing stuff, and my husband often tells me, "You're doing too much. You're doing too much." So number one, learning work-life balance is important because you're effective to no one if you don't rest.
Yep.
And understanding the difference between the battle and the war, learning that as well. Um, Getting proper nutrition. Like in the summer, I like to walk more. I don't love it in the winter. I hate walking through snow. But finding a way to have an outlet. I do like cardio on the machine that I have in my house, an elliptical. But really, what I am learning, even recently, because I had a lot to process through with family stuff with regard to my grandmother passing, is I just had to sit myself down. And for like 2 days, I got into an artistic mode and was just coloring and creating and writing. And it felt good. And it was me being able to think through a lot of different things that were going on in my head. But it also produced something beautiful, at least to me. At least it was beautiful to me in the piece of art. And so taking time to release, because it is hard work, it's frustrating work, it's a work that you battle trust and all of that with, um, but knowing when to say no also, and just knowing when to retreat. You got to take time to retreat, you do, and then finding a company with trusted community where you can talk things out and bounce things off. And I have a few people like that I'm grateful for, just to you know, because sometimes you need to hear other people say, because sometimes you have self-doubt too, you know, you doubt
Mhm.
yourself, like, you know, you start questioning, you know, yourself and what am I even doing, blah blah blah. But just finding your people, you know, it might take a little while, because I feel like I'm finally landing in that space. But you got to have balance too, like, and that's probably my biggest struggle is
Mm.
balance.
Mhm.
You can say no to some things.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all really good lessons. And I really liked what you said about knowing the difference between a battle and the war. That kind of just clicked in my head that there's definitely a difference in how do you identify each, like what's going to move the
Mhm.
war forward and when you need to conserve your energy.
Yeah, and I'm still learning that.
Yeah.
I'm a reactive person by nature, so but as I get older, I start to realize different things, and that's one of the things coming into the new year, particularly, that I'm just always thinking about.
Yeah, that's great. Before we kind of wrap things up, I wanted to ask one last question. For parents and caregivers, what are some of the biggest things that you want them to know about operating the education system, caring for their kids,
Mhm.
knowing what resources are out there?
My number one thing I would say, because I am a mother, show up for your kids, because you know your child better than anyone. That's your child. Um, Advocate for your child. Be present in the school system. Show up at board meetings. But um, that's your child. It's the you know the it takes a village, yes, but when it comes to what your child needs, speak for your child. And also, as your child matures, and this is something we've had to do with all three of ours, teach your child how to advocate for themselves, because they might be in a situation where you can't get to them right away.
Mm.
um, Maybe you're at work or something, you know, and they just educate your child on how to advocate for themselves, and know when to speak up and how to do that. That's why with the education committee, I'm really passionate about helping do workshops, to help understand what self advocacy can look like and who can assist you with that. I would say, um, you know, look for your community folks also who can who can help you, because there are certain things that you might not quite understand about the educational system works. So just always communicate, always show up, um, ask for help within your community. Sometimes you have to start from the outside to have an impact on the inside. So um, yeah, and I'm speaking that way as a parent and as, you know, as an educator. But just my number one thing, show up for your child, because um, the system, the the way the educational system exists today, we need to be present and hold the system accountable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
hold them accountable. Yeah, because that's your child.
Yeah, yeah. Um, is there any project or event coming up that you want to plug or any last words?
Yeah, sure. The Black Lens launches on February 1st. Um, there's a Black Voices Symposium, the third one. I helped a lot with getting some of the art for that last year, and I was able to submit more pieces this year because we did have workshops. That event is happening at the Myrtle Wilson Theater
Okay.
at on the Gonzaga campus. I believe it's happening on the 4th. The spokesman is doing that. So it's happening after the launch of the Black Lens that same week. Um, I want to say it's February 4th, but the information can be found through the spokesman.
Okay.
Um, I can actually probably look it up really quick. But that's what I'm excited about because Black History Month is coming. So
Yep.
definitely that. And you know, there's this we have new leadership in the city and in the NAACP. So there was going to be a swearing in this week, but we got Snowmageddon, so it's been
Yeah.
postponed to next week at the Central Library on Thursday next week. So
Awesome.
I don't want to say the wrong date, so I'm going to pause. But yeah, so right now, yeah, that's what I got for upcoming events. I'm really excited about you know, the voice of the community coming back through the Black lens. So
Yeah.
and then always glad to work with the spokesman anytime students can realize their potential, particularly through the arts. I do want to plug something, but I'll have to get more information out there, and I can just tell you what my email address is.
Oh
But
yeah.
the Links Incorporated is having a national poster contest, and I shared the information for the students who attended the workshops. But I would like to encourage that because there are two different ones. One's a poster contest for all grade levels, and then there's another one that allows you to do visual performing arts by video and so forth. But it's a national contest, so I really want to spread news about that, and I'm working on getting a flyer out there so that we can get submissions for that. And the theme, there's a theme around my family, my health, and then there's the second one is around any of the facets that the links focuses on, which are social justice based,
That's awesome.
different things. So I'm really wanting to stimulate that in our community as well. And that's coming up, but you can email me at aprilriv1976@gmail.com and ask me a question. But I have different channels of communication in the Spokane community, so I'll be getting that information pushed out in different ways. So just want to let, if you have an artist of a student then or a student who loves to express, there will be an opportunity for them in that capacity. So
Great.
hopefully I didn't forget. I'm pretty sure I forgot something, but that's the gist. That's the gist of what's coming up in my brain right now.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you
Yeah,
for spending this time and talking with me. You bring a really great energy, and just hearing about all your work is so inspiring, and this whole time I'm just like, yeah, like how can I help her? How can I support her? Like I
I
want
will be in touch.
I want you to do all the things,
Yeah,
so thank you so much.
and I'd love to have you come to Shadle and talk to students as well. So I will definitely stay in touch with that because I believe strong communities create and cultivate strong schools. So
Great. Well, thank you
yeah,
so much.
thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.